Welcome to another episode of the Strength Blog. My name is Philip Nestam. I'm a co-founder of Strength Blog and a certified nutrition coach.
And I am Daniel Richter, CEO of StrengthLog and a certified personal trainer. How's the voice, Philip?
Well, I'm recovering from a man cold that I'm going to blame on my wife. She blames it on me, but I know she had it first. And I'm also recovering from a week as a bachelor, as we mentioned in the last episode.
Yeah.
So I wonder these two things combine, me living like trash for a week and also catching a cold.
Exactly.
So weird.
Yeah, I got a comment on my Instagram account with someone deducing that I didn't seem to be the one living the bachelor life. So I must be the other one.
The funny thing about that comment was because you can do ass to grass squats.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. That's how it works.
Is the point that if you're living like a bachelor, you're gonna shit yourself if you do the ass to grass squats? Because I used to do ass to grass squats before I became fat again, and when I moved up in weight classes, my range of motion decreased because stuff got in the way.
Yeah.
But I've never shit myself from squatting.
I think it has to do with purity, because the deep paused ass to that squat is the purest form of a squat, and so it's associated with a pure lifestyle.
That must be it. If you're watching this on YouTube, shout out YouTubers. You will also notice that I'm in a new environment because my office has shit itself. This past weekend, we got back on Monday, and my pod studio was flooded. The apartments above had a water leak, so it will probably be months and months before I can go back into the pod office, and I had to buy new equipment, and it was a small panic there for a while, but here we are, not missing a single episode, not even from
No, we are not.
a water leak.
And, well, we've been more than a year into not missing a single week, and we are almost making a 1-year trip back in time to revisit an old topic and an old study, if you will call it that. I suppose the correct technical term would be a meta-regression. Like a combination or pooling of a ton of different strength training studies, comparing high or low volume, to put it in a simple way. So we're going back to episode 32, where we talked about this study when it initially came out from Josh Pelland. I don't think it was the sole author. I haven't checked. Let's say et al. Well, and we were kind of excited when this meta-regression came out, because training volume has been one of yours and mine's favorite topics for quite some time.
I mean, it's hard to be in this game without considering how much should you actually train.
Yeah, and as we've with the years been able to put down other variables, as it doesn't really seem to matter, you can do it many ways. Training volume has been like the final bastion where it actually matters quite a bit, or so it seems. But then we read this paper, we talked about it, and so that paper, the intention was to look at, so how does muscle growth or muscle hypertrophy, how does that develop with increasing training volume? And how does strength gains develop with increasing training volume? And just to get the definition straight here, when we talk about training volume in this episode and in that study and the other studies we're going to talk about today, we are generally referring to weekly sets for a given muscle or movement. And that is hard sets, meaning sets taken close to failure or all the way to failure. So when we say 10 sets per week, that's what we mean. So, and anyway, the results that came out, well, they were pleasing enough for as far as muscle growth goes, because they didn't see a clear cap on volume. It showed that more volume was better, without any limits in these studies. And there were 35 different studies on muscle growth, about 50-50 with trained and untrained participants. And, that's cool news for a volume junkie. But you and I might be, while we are interested in muscle growth, we might be even more interested in strength gains. And there, the story was completely different, because this series of meta-regressions, and for strength gains, 66 different studies were included. They found that the cap on training volume were already at 5 sets per week. So 2 sets were better than 1, 3 sets were better than 2, but after 5, there were no clear indication that more hard sets per week were better for strength gains, which baffled us.
Yeah, I went back and listened yesterday to episode
Me too.
32, and we sounded confused.
Yeah.
And I also looked at our old manuscript, and one of the sentences stuck out to me. There was, "This is not what we see in real life."
Which always makes me cringe a bit, because I mean the studies aren't performed in some alternate reality.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I haven't dove deep into it yet, but just the other day I saw claiming that 85% of all studies are flawed when it comes to the math in training and health.
Oh yeah, I assume.
Yes, a bit alternate reality, maybe.
Yeah. You know, in addition to being a personal trainer, I do actually have a master's degree in civil engineering. And I want to say that one of my strengths in math was that I was quite fast, but often a bit incorrect. But I was really fast. My specialization was fire protection engineering, by the way.
Is that when you learn how to burn stuff down?
Kind of.
Cool.
So where were we? Yeah. Oh yeah. So 5 sets per week as a cap, where more training didn't yield better results. And like when you try to look closer at this from a high point or high perspective, well, okay, so around 60 studies, and around half of them were in untrained participants and half of them in trained participants. And now when we talk about trained participants in training studies, they are not usually that trained. I mean, even compared to like just the general listener of this podcast, because it might be an entirely new movement. Maybe they have been to the gym for 2 years, but they haven't trained a lot of knee extensions, which the study is about, or something like that. Whereas you and I, and maybe a lot of the podcast listeners, they have been doing the same exercises for tons of years, and their muscles and their sensitivity to that movement is trained in an entirely different way. But so that was one thing. And the other thing was that the studies were on average around 10 weeks. And what you and I talked about in that episode was that, well, even with many people being untrained, 10 weeks should kind of be enough to start seeing some differences between doing, say, 5 sets per week and 10 sets per week. But that wasn't the case in this huge batch of studies. And also, if muscle growth keeps increasing with higher volumes, why don't strength gains keep increasing? Because strength is essentially your hardware plus or multiplied with your software, meaning your muscle fibers and what you can do with your muscle fibers, and everything else similar. If you have bigger and stronger muscle fibers, you should theoretically be stronger with that. So more muscle growth should lead to more strength. And now we are revisiting this topic to kind of set the record straight for ourselves and towards you, the listener, because we got new intel.
Yeah.
Someone else has been doing the thinking for us.
Hopefully not with a master in fire engineering.
Oh, I mean, that's not the issue. The issue is being incorrect, but fast. The man I'm talking about, I don't know how fast he is, but I do suspect he's more often correct. We're talking about an old favorite of yours and mine, Greg Nuckols from Stronger by Science, who's been, well, one of yours and my favorite authors in this niche of like evidence-based strength training for a decade now.
I still miss the old name of his webpage.
Strength Theory.
That was a good name.
Yeah. So, lifter and general smart dude Greg Nuckols, he wrote a super long article about training volume. The estimated reading time was around 5 hours, so it was a book-length article about training volume based on this meta-regression by Pellet.
Yeah, you can download the article as a PDF, and the PDF is like 259 pages.
Yeah. So we read that.
Yeah.
and some parts of it several times. And I don't claim to be able to get it all, just like when we talked about Pellen's study. And I don't have it in me to do all the legwork to analyze all the studies included, and so on and so forth. So in this episode, we're kind of just gonna go and explain what Greg's findings were when he did some, let's say, sub-analysis of the same data. Because, as it turns out, mixing many untrained lifters or studies with untrained lifters with studies with trained lifters muddled the results more than you and I imagined. That was basically the big thing in it. In Greg's analysis, when he lifted out only the studies looking at trained lifters, there was a clearer relationship between more training volume leading to better strength gains and a clearer relationship with muscle growth. But when you added a ton of untrained participant studies on top of that, it muddled the picture, especially for strength gains. And the reasons for why the same rules might not really apply when we're talking about training volume and strength gains in untrained lifters is because, well, for one thing, initial strength gains, especially in complex movements like, say, squats or bench pressing or deadlifting, has a lot to do with just learning the movement, and you could bunch some of it up to neural adaptations that your body is just learning to orchestrate that movement and recruiting the right muscles, and then recruiting them hard enough and relaxing in the right muscles. So there's a lot of, say, software stuff going on when you're learning a new movement. In a simpler movement, like just a bicep curl or leg extension, this isn't as big of a factor, but it's still a really
that's one of my favorite examples. We've seen in when they have measured muscle activation in the leg extension that total noobs, they activate the hamstrings. That's so funny to me. But it's also, it makes sense because you don't know what to do. So your body just tenses up in places that it's counterproductive to tense up.
So, and also, to answer the question of, well, if muscle growth increased, even in beginners with increasing volume, why didn't we see that in strength gains? And here the explanation is because those are different sets of studies. The purpose of Pellen's paper wasn't to show the relationship between strength and muscle gains. It was to show the relationship between training volume and muscle gains and training volume and strength. So some of the studies were the same in both of those batches, but far from all of them. So the analysis that Greg did was he picked out the studies that included trained participants and that measured both muscle growth and strength gains to see what relationship those had. And he ended up with 8 studies containing 22 unique groups of subjects with a total of 35 different paired measurements of strength and hypertrophy. So for instance, testing the squat and measuring the quadriceps thickness to see how they relate to each other. And when you plot these results out, you get a completely different image than the one where strength gains capped out at 5 sets per week. You now see that higher training volumes lead to larger gains in both muscle growth and in strength gains. And what's more, it even seemed to be slightly more important for increasing strength gains. And the pattern, it was even linear in these 8 studies. So, I mean, linear, meaning that you basically can draw a line between increasing number of sets and increasing strength and muscle gains. And I want to say, and Greg also notes, that this is probably not a linear relationship in reality. It's just that the data from these studies turned out to form that pattern. But in reality, I think we all can kind of guess that if you do 1,000 sets per week, you're probably not going to get 1,000 times better results than doing 1 set per week. Probably not. So there's probably going to be a, what do you call it? A marginal decline.
Diminishing return.
Diminishing return. So if we dig into these 8 studies a little bit with 9 different comparison in this case, the high volume groups in these 8 studies, they averaged doing 27 hard sets per week for a given muscle or movement. So that's quite a bit. And the low volume groups averaged doing 19 sets per week. And the results were that the folks or the groups training with the highest volumes, the 27 sets per week, they gained more strength in 7 out of the 9 comparisons and gained more muscle in 8 out of the 9 comparisons versus the groups training with the lower volume, which averaged 19 sets
And
per
I mean,
week.
19 sets per week per muscle is not considered low.
No, definitely not. So these are already high
Yeah.
volume numbers. And I mean, to see a difference between these two, almost 30 sets compared to almost 20 sets per week, I mean, this has already shifted the debate that used to be, say, between 20 and 10 sets per week, where it hasn't been entirely clear that 20 sets per week is better than 10 sets per week. So, out of these studies on train lifters, they improved their 1 rep max by 20% on average on the high volume programs and by 14% on the lower volume programs. So, yeah, exactly. It's still a high volume, but lower than the higher volume. So that's a huge increase. That's like almost 40% more.
Yeah.
6 percentage units, but almost 40% more. And muscle growth was 9% in the higher volume groups versus 5.5% in the lower volume groups. So also a huge difference. And also in 8 out of the 9 comparisons, the hypertrophy and the strength results, they were in, as Greg puts it, directional agreement, meaning that the level of volume that led to larger strength gains also led to more muscle growth.
Don't you just love it when the universe aligns like this?
Yes, nature is healing.
It is.
So to go back to Pellen's meta regression, it's very difficult. It's very important to point out that nothing is wrong with that analysis and that study. It's just an other analysis with more data. So this that we just went through was a sub-analysis and looking at the different relationships. But we can still conclude that when we take a huge number of people, I think it was like 2,000 people in total in his analysis, where half of them are beginners, strength gains do cap out at about 5 sets per week in the initial 10 weeks for most beginners. So, I mean, that's still useful to know that when you are new to the iron game, you don't need to stress about doing 27 sets per week.
No, and that's
very little.
all our beginner programs we have in our app, Strength Log. It's free. You should download it. They are on the lower end of the volume spectra, and a lot of beginners give us feedback that why is it so little training? Because you don't need more.
Exactly. It's
quality over quantity at first, and then you're gonna need more later. And
and we're gonna get into that. But it's always good to start with a little, because the workout's gonna be faster. It's not gonna be as strenuous for you, and and lower injury risk.
And lower muscle soreness and everything.
Yeah. What is still a bit cool and still is slightly weird almost is that we still don't have a clear cap for muscle growth, even in this huge group with a lot of beginners. We saw that, say, 10 sets per week was very good for muscle growth. 20 sets per week was still kind of good. But even if you go up to 30, it's still getting better and better. I mean, huge diminishing return, but still more gains.
And the last part there is worth stressing about, because it's not like, it's easy to hear that 20 was better than 10, but 30 wasn't that much better. Yeah, but it's still better.
But I would argue that the injury risk for someone who's making like a steep incline up these levels of volume, that increases like manifold for each level.
Yeah, I just want to argue against people saying, but it's not worth it. It might be worth it for you. Those extra few percentage points, if you're trying to be a competitive bodybuilder, it makes a difference, especially over years.
Yeah, absolutely. Because let's get into some new and updated volume guidelines and recommendations. And if we begin at the beginner level, I still think that the often touted 10 hard sets per movement and muscle and week, I still think that's kind of a nice upper level to aim for. You can do less than this. You can do 3 or 5 sets for a muscle or movement in your first months. Per week in your first months. But if you want to like maximize your gains as a beginner and you're highly motivated, you can safely go up to 10 sets per week. I mean, provided that you don't get an ache or pains or something like that, in which case you need to back off a bit again. But it's still a low risk training volume level. And then it can gradually build from there, depending on how much time you want to put in, depending on what's required for you to progress and make gains. Because, I mean, if your program is working, keep doing that. But then when you stall, increasing the training volume is, in my opinion, the most obvious action you take. If you do everything else right, I mean, you're sleeping enough, you're eating enough, things like that. The training variable to change.
The things to consider is going to be time and passion. Do I want to train more?
Precisely.
Do I have the time to train more? And we might never know what the upper limits are here because people won't be doing it, maybe.
Maybe. And there's going to be such a huge individual variance. And also at the highest level, there's going to be a big portion of just luck if you manage to take it. I mean, if we make a parallel to endurance running, even just for like running the 10K, we see the elites, they are basically running a marathon a day or more in some cases. And that doesn't mean anyone who likes to get into jogging has to aim for running a marathon per day. It's mostly
cool if they did.
It's more that this kind of blows the lid on what is possible or like achievable training volumes. That might help. But as mentioned, there is going to be individual variance. Your other circumstances is going to dictate which is the highest productive or positive training volume for you. For a lot of people, it's probably going to be at least 10 sets per week. And still for a lot of people, still for the majority maybe, 20 sets per muscle and movement per week might be positive and better than 10 sets per week. That's the image that's clearing up. And if you say that you really want to go into this and you adjust your lifestyle and circumstances to be able to tolerate as much training as possible, you can probably venture north of 20 sets per week to see how that affects your body as well. I don't think that as many people will get better results from it, but I do believe that I do believe now that more people can get better results from it than I thought previously before I read Greg's book on training volume.
I can't prove it, and this might be dumb, but I think that there's a lot of people out there who almost view themselves as non-responders. They are like, I'm putting my time in at the gym, but I don't see any results. And there's so many variables and so many confounders. They might not be eating right. They might not be sleeping right. One thing I think that a lot of those people have going against them is that they basically just train too little. When they are in the gym, they do too few hard sets. They don't push themselves enough. And these are the people that really need to hear that maybe your results are waiting for you at the top of the volume hill if you just climb that hill.
Exactly.
And you will finally see those results you've been dreaming about.
Yeah, that might be the case. And there are some studies showing that when you put people on some training program and, you see some people get good gains and you see some people get no gains, so non-responders. When you increase the volume for the non-responders, they turn into responders. So that might be a thing.
And the usual disclaimer, of course, there's people that have genetic diseases and stuff like that makes them not respond well to training and make them feel worse. But we're talking about healthy individuals here.
Yeah. So, I feel a bit vindicated. And I also do feel a bit dumb.
I feel so dumb. When I listen to us talking in episode 32, after having read this analysis by Greg Nuckols, I listened to my own words. I was like, I hope we can delete episode 32 without anyone noticing.
Now we absolutely can do it.
painted ourselves into a corner. No, but this is, I mean, I'm not claiming we're scientists because we're not, but this is how science works. And I'm actually glad that this paper came out a year ago, because you and I were not the only one to react. Apparently Greg reacted, and a lot of other people reacted. These are not the expected results for trained individuals. Nobody caps out at 5 sets per week.
Precisely.
So I'm very glad that we got a chance to revisit this.
Yeah, me too. And now I don't feel like we have to change all of our advanced training programs in the app, which are at 20 plus weekly sets.
Me too. But once again, I know you hate the expression in the real world, but we know that these training programs for advanced power lifters, for instance, we know that these advanced power lifters get great results from following one of our advanced bench press programs with 30, 40 working sets per week or something like that.
Yeah, I mentioned the running world and how the top is training there, and I sense something similar in the top echelons of powerlifting. That, I mean, there's been a high volume trend for some time, but it kind of dipped down a bit in the past few years, but now it's back with a vengeance, I think. And people are trying to train as much as possible, almost, and on many days per week. And I mean, this is one of the inspirations for why I currently do my experiment of daily training. Very far from failure, but like one of the goals is that I want to accumulate a high volume to see if I get some good gains from that.
Where are you at right now in your...
So today I'm gonna do day 25 of what would be called block 2, because I did 63 days almost consecutive, then took a week's vacation. We went to Spain, and now I haven't missed a day in 25 days, and I'm pushing it a bit harder this time around in block 2. I'm throwing more caution to the wind and just trying to push the volume, still gradual and controlled, like I'm adding a set per week or something like that, and I'm monitoring how much I increase on a weekly basis. And you know, things flare up and I handle that, and then they ebb out again. And after like a week ago, things seemed fairly bleak. I had pains here and there, but now many of them have subsided. Some new ones have popped up, but I'm starting to sense like how I can work around these and handle them when they show up. So I think I still, like, even this week needs to be fairly calm, but I can see that I can, with a decent probability, keep pushing in a week or two. So the squat has been one thing where sitting for extended periods at my office chair, it gives me hip pain, and then that flares up when I squat. So I had to backtrack a bit in weights there. And because I mean, otherwise the squat is where I've been a non-responder. So that is where I really want to push the volumes to see if that makes it move. But as I have... I've had to take it a bit slow in the squat, so I've been focusing more on the bench and deadlift instead and racking up the volume there. And we'll see what happens.
Have you started eyeing the competition calendar for next year?
No, not yet. I need to get my squat in order first. And I mean, sooner or later, I suppose I should try lifting with like belts and knee sleeves and all of those gizmos just to see like if it makes a difference. I don't know.
I love those long training periods when you just go back to basics and do it raw without the sleeves, without the belt. And I always felt like I came back even stronger when I put this shit back on.
Yeah, but the thing that I know is on the horizon is that when I put the belt and the sleeves on and I just expect to be stronger immediately, I know that I probably won't, because it's just going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
not like how it used to feel.
It takes a week or two over that.
Oh, it takes 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
Not for you, Daniel. You're an animal.
We'll see, but I still enjoy it, and I want to like see it to the end of it, so to say.
And you just published 2 long videos on our YouTube channel. strength of
Yeah.
where you in the first one you explain the concept, what you've been doing, and in the second one you answer all the follow-up questions people had.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in this, definitely check out the YouTube channel where you can also watch episodes of this podcast.
Yeah, but don't
No.
watch the episodes of the podcast. I mean, put it on a podcast player like in Apple Podcast or Spotify and go for a walk or something.
Yeah. One of these days we're gonna have a cool studio and you're gonna fly in for every episode.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
vice versa.
I saw that the huge podcast Modern Wisdom recently celebrated 1,000 episodes, and I think they replicated, the corn farm from Interstellar, and they had Matthew McConaughey as a guest.
Nice.
So I mean, we can do something like that.
That's it. I'm rewatching Interstellar for the 10th time.
Yeah. All right. Good to talk about volume, and let's see what we can misinterpret in next week's episode.
Do you know what we're gonna talk about?
No, I actually don't. But I feel like there's a lot of good stuff coming
Yeah,
out.
cool.
So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Train hard, eat well, die anyway.